Hello everyone, and thanks for clicking on this video. Not sure why you did. Okay, first off, I made a video talking about all the problems within RWBY. The link should be in the description. And you might be asking yourself, why did you put it on YouTube? Well, the ultimate problem with that is, like every 5 seconds, YouTube hits me with a copyright claim or something stupid like that, even though I never do any of that kind of crap. So I can't. I'm basically done for the next like 6 months. It's already been 1 month. So for the next 5 months, I'm only gonna put up either random, LP footage and me playing out games, or I'm gonna put up the manga reviews. I think I'm gonna still put up the manga reviews because I haven't had a single contact notification for any of those. And as long as I don't use music and just the images, it should be fine. So that's why I'm actually moved most of my content over to Daily Motion, just because they haven't been screwing with me yet. You never know. So, link in the description if you want to watch that. I would advise you not watching that if you're clicking on this video and you're not one of my fans, the 3 of you, because I pretty much insult the fan base of RWBY right in the beginning, and there's some backstory to it. But just ignore that insult, because, like I said, I wasn't justified in saying it, but there was a reason for me saying it. So if you want to actually kind of hear my point and why the show is just bad, click the video. But like, if you were easily insulted, don't, because I straight up insult you and call you stupid. So I do now that after I got past the whole being angry with the fan base, I kind of regretted it a little bit, but not really. So. Yeah, but just understand that point. And now, even though this is supposed to be just a hey, let me put up a video on YouTube and let you link to that, I'm actually gonna talk about a bunch of stuff, because a lot of the things I need to say, like right now, it's either I shouldn't put it in a video, or I can't put it in a video properly while still, actually having the reviewer aspect, more of a professional critique to the thing. But that's just the problem I have. So there's some things I want to say, I need to say, and I'm just gonna babble on here. So just, if you don't want to watch that, if you don't want to do with all that crap, please just click the link or just exit out. But I'm actually gonna discuss some other minor things that won't be in either of my reviews, because the first video that's the first half of the season. The next video that's going to come out fairly soon, as soon as the 16th episode comes out, and I watch it even though I think it's out today. I just, I'm kind of lazy and I don't want to get around to it. I've got other things more to do, sleeping dogs and all that fun stuff. So, I've got some stuff to talk about. I kind of spammed my review as a joke and as just trying to mess with people, and I loved it so much. It was a lot of fun. I was trolling hard. I spammed a bunch of my videos and kind of just to force people to watch it, because I want people to know why it's bad, and the fan base really doesn't even think about why they like it, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is get people to think about why they like it and why is it good and stuff like that. So I spammed a bunch, and that turned out to be kind of successful, because people argued, people didn't argue, and it was all all that fun jazz. And some people had some very unintelligible, interesting things to say. One of the things that happened was, I think it was to a comment I made about the fact that Weiss and Ruby were sisters, and they did not have that Weiss and Ruby were sisters, but they had different last names, and I questioned that, and I said hasn't been established in the show yet. So basically, I said it hasn't been established in the show, but the last names have been. So, and I was just kind of going, so what's up with that? I wasn't even saying whether that's bad or good. And a bunch of people said, "Whoa, man, you gotta do your research, man. You gotta do your research." So, and at this point of making the review, I've only watched the series. I had never watched any of the trailers. I never watched any of the panels, because you shouldn't have to do those things in order to review a series and be intelligent about those things. So, well, as you guess, I went back through, watched all the panels, watched all the trailers, and as you might know, I came to certain conclusions that were profoundly the same thing that I had beforehand. I'm not sure what they were stating, because they're pretty much general just comments. They weren't actually discussing my points I made in my video. They were more of just kind of saying random things that were like, "Oh man, you just didn't do your research" and stuff. Like I said, I shouldn't have to do my research for a series if I have the series in my hands. You know, like, just because I only have, like, as long as I have the stuff, if I'm reviewing the stuff that I have in my hands, then it shouldn't matter what else is there. And so basically I went back and I watched all the trailers, and I was actually pleasantly surprised. The show is infinitely worse than the trailers, even though Monty and many others would say otherwise, just based on the fact that everything functions and everything is incredibly well animated. That, and there aren't fundamental flaws in the writing. That's probably the biggest point. But, like, I actually quite enjoyed the trailers, and it almost, I mean, I can understand it. If I had not seen the series before I watched the trailers, I would genuinely say that I would have been psyched for them, because the red, the white, and the yellow trailer were amazing. The black trailer was kind of dumb, but, you know, whatever, you know, you win some, you lose some. But, okay, but that's the thing. But they came back, and the whole argument, the whole point of that was, you know, if I couldn't make an intelligent review of the thing until I had seen the trailers. So that's what the guy basically was presenting. That's not the case. That is horrifyingly not the case, because nothing in the trailers are even remotely relevant, at least at this point in the series. Maybe the trailers will be relevant several seasons away from now, you know, season 7 or 8, because that'd be like hour 10, maybe. But, like, 7 or 8, like, it has such a, because the first part of it is just, like, the first season is just about this school, so far, at least. Nothing that happens in the trailers are even remotely relevant. They just kind of establish the character, and they don't even do that very well. And even then, like, so, and the fact is, they even mention the fact that some things in the trailers, like Monty even mentioned this in that panel that I had to watch. Monty even mentioned the fact that some of the trailers, like at least the red trailer, doesn't quite fit anymore because of certain changes in the series. Because, you know, there was an entire, I can't remember what exact time it was, but I think it was like 9 months between the first episode airing and when the first trailer was released, and that's a long time for a show to change. So, and that's the entire point. The trailer is just to get the people excited about the series. The trailer should have zero relevance on anything that happens within that series. Like, if it's not established in the series, it doesn't matter if it was established in the trailer. It doesn't matter what Monty says on a panel. You have to establish that crap in the series. And I had that argument with a bunch of people too. If you don't establish it in the series, then what's the point? It's like all the alternate lore for everything in books and stuff, it doesn't matter, because, like, all the Star Wars books mean nothing, absolutely nothing, if you're watching the movies. Because, remember, the movies are the main thing. The movies are the thing that most people watch and most people view. If it's in a book, and you establish it in a book, and you just expect people to watch it in the next movie, and understand that in the next movie, you are going to be horrifyingly confused. You have to establish that crap. And the fact is, and most of this argument is about the whole Ruby Weiss thing, even though a lot of people said, oh, you didn't know about the trailers, what you were load, blah. A bunch of dumb stuff like that, is the fact that it would, because, well, here's a point later on that he'll talk about, and I'll get to that later, but he basically says, he misconstrues the idea between character establishment and character development. And it would be incredibly easy to establish why, because he talks about in the panel, like, that there's a story behind it, and it'll make sense, but it won't happen for a long way away. But you don't have to establish that. You really don't. All you have to do, I mean, you do, but not in a way that's, you don't have to tell us the entire story. Like, you could just have Blake looking at Ruby and Weiss, and then they say they're sisters and stuff like that. It's like, you guys are sisters? You don't really act alike, and you don't really look alike, so how are you guys related? And then Ruby or Weiss just goes, we're stepsisters, or we're adoptive sisters, you know, something like that. You establish it and you move on. You don't have to know about anything else. They also, like, a bunch of people also suspect that, like, because, like, in the trailers, they show, like, her, Ruby sitting at a grave. And people talk about how, like, because in my review, I kind of misconstrued the fact that, like, it probably leads into the fact that Ruby and Wang, like Ruby was adopted or something like that. Or maybe she was a stepsister because her mother remarried or something. But here's the ultimate problem with that. They actually established something like this in episode 3. In episode 3, she was she's sitting on her bed writing letters back to her friends. Or I don't know if it's just like a blanket on the floor or something like that. But she's laying down and she's writing a letter back to her friends in Signal? I don't know, I can't remember that. The big school's name is Beacon. But she's writing her friends back to her old school. And she talks about how basically we're just having, it's like a big old sleepover, and it says, and Ruby says, I bet Dad wouldn't approve of all the boys, or some lining of that. And she says it in a manner that doesn't seem like her dad's dead. It makes it seem like as if her dad is alive and he would actually be, like, it's not like a fond looking back, oh, great, yeah, because Dad, and she says it as if Dad, unless her parents died young, and then she would, like, form that new connection with, like, and be calling her new stepdad Dad, but that just doesn't, like, I'm just saying, like, it establishes, it almost seems like her dad's still alive. Maybe her mom died and they remarried. I don't know. I'm just saying they have established some things, and it would be really easy. All you have to do is have one single throwaway line, and you just completely establish it altogether. So yeah, that yeah, yay. Yeah. If you have watched my video and you're coming back here for some reason to yell at me or comment, and you're just listening to this or whatever, after I kind of established my view on this, it's there's actually a couple good things that has come out of this in my recent understanding. Again, like, basically that I've gotten after my first review, because, you know, arguments and petty things like that and having all my fun. If you've watched the viewer counts for this, it's dropped dramatically, and I'm saying that's a very, very good thing. Like, on YouTube alone, and please don't go, oh, no, they don't use that. The numbers are dropping universally on all the websites, and you can tell me how much is the most watched show on Control, but I don't care about that. That's stupid. No, it's not. No, it's not. Basically, but the viewerships on YouTube have dropped from, they used to consistently get around 800,000 views, which ain't bad, which is actually kind of bad for non-Red versus, like, for Red versus Blue, that would be pretty bad numbers. But it's still not that bad. But then it dropped to a consistent 200,000 views. And that is really bad. Especially for something that they put that much money into. Because that's about their viewership for, like, their news. And some of their other, like, lower things that have, like, no budget to it. Like, $0 that go into these videos. And they just put them up. 200,000 views. That's actually great. Because they didn't put any money to it. And they're going to get a bunch of money out of that. You know, that's basically $200, $300 for a video. And they probably didn't put $10 into it. Maybe. But with RWBY dropping that hardcore in viewership numbers, that's actually a very bad sign for the RWBY, and I think that's actually a very, very good thing that's going to happen. And before you guys kind of yell at me and go, "Oh, you just want to see Monty lose and blah blah blah," I really don't care about that. I'm not so petty to say that, "Oh, I'm glad Monty's losing." I'm actually kind of disappointed, but this is the natural thing that needs to happen. Monty is a good animator. He is a great animator, but he is terrible at writing and plot development and creating a series, creating something that's good on a grand scale, something that is more than just action. Which, if you know Monty's past, you would know that all he does is action. That's why he got hired to Rooster Teeth, is because all his Dead Fantasy and Haploid stuff, that's all action, and it's really well done. But a series that has character development has more than just action in it, you know? And so that's ultimately where it's coming from. And I don't want him, and I don't want to sound like, oh yeah, he's going to lose the series, that's great. Because actually, well, it is great, but it's not great in that way. It's the fact that after he loses his series, Monty, hopefully, if Monty isn't petty about it, and Monty isn't, stubborn about it, he will learn that he has these massive faults in these special areas. Because, of course, some of the action scenes in the RWBY are pretty sweet. So that's that's going to happen because he has all this experience in animating these high action scenes. But he has all these problems. So hopefully, if after the series fails and after it gets canceled, which I'm hoping it does, because if it doesn't, it's just going to continue on. It's going to continue draining resources from Rooster Teeth. After this, hopefully he'll look back and say, "What did I do wrong?" Because he hasn't come to that point. He hasn't come to that point in his artistic career where you doubt everything that you do. I think every great artist, I think almost every artist ever, who actually evolves and changes and develops an even more artistic ability and more artistic skill, even more an artistic identity, will come to that point, and I have done this as well, just as I hope Monty will after this too, is the fact that you will doubt your ability to do anything. you will literally doubt your ability to even think properly, to develop ideas properly, and that's a natural occurrence because you have this childish like fan fiction phase when you're really young, or when you're young in your artistic expression and career, where you just do not, when you think you're the greatest thing ever, and that's got to stop, and that's got to go away. And then because you go from this thing where you think that you can do, that everything you do is great art, is high art, and is amazing. When you change from that, almost always it automatically brings you down to the fact that I'm not very good, I'm awful. And I'm really, really hoping he hits that stage, even though that's a bad, like, that's the stage that makes or breaks an artist, because once you hit that stage, you are, like, if you don't get out of that stage and you don't rethink and redevelop, you absolutely fail. I mean, it'll break you and you'll never recover again. But I think Monty is a good enough animator and intelligent enough that he will hit this stage, realize, okay, I can do this, I need to improve on this, so I'm going to have to improve on this. And I'm really hoping he does that, because if not, he's going to continue to make shows that are just this bad. And if you haven't watched my review, I discuss why it's that bad. It is horrifyingly bad. There are so many plot points that are just so wrong. And many people keep arguing and yelling at me. It's like, it's just, who cares about the art, you know? Who cares, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, the art doesn't bother me of that show. Like, if it was just the art that was a problem, that is a Rooster Teeth problem. That is a Rooster Teeth business model problem, where they have to release a video every week. That's their schedule. And it works for Red vs. Blue because it's just a quick humor thing. It's never, you don't have to do that much in a Red vs. Blue video because it's all about the humor, quick-wittedness, and all that stuff. Like, you don't really need to think about all that kind of stuff because it's just fun humor. It's just stupid humor, and that's the best part about it. RWBY is a character development series. So, when you base your main premise on character development and character arcs, you have to have that stuff incredibly well paced and all these different things. And I go into the review, and I'm definitely going to go into even more in the review, and blah, blah, blah. And it just fails on that aspect. So that's pretty much the entire problem with the fact. And hopefully, with the viewership dropping, hopefully the series will fail, and he'll have to rethink about all this stuff. And if he gets it, if he rethinks about it, because he seems like he's pretty stubborn. Hopefully he'll break through that, and because that's definitely the most important. Like, he needs to get rid of that. So that way, because Rooster Teeth can easily get another series with Rooster Teeth. Maybe if they're willing to take him on again, and if they do a better job this time, it'll work. Yeah, because like really, this is like half Rooster Teeth's problem, half Monty's problem. Because the ultimately, the whole thing boils down to both people were unprepared to do this series and were unwilling to change how they work in what they do, and it fundamentally broke a potentially good idea. I mean, RWBY is the most generic thing you could possibly think of, but that doesn't make it bad. You know, it's just another generic thing. But at least if it had a new spin on it, and if it had Monty animating it and doing a good job with that, it could and probably would be awesome. But, you know, all that fun jazz and stuff. Oh, excuse me. It's not. Rooster Teeth was unwilling to change its business model, kept it as a weekly series, which is horrifyingly stupid of them. It's basically saying, because it's basically saying we want to be South Park, but we don't want to have because basically South Park, they work themselves to death every week while they work. Those guys work really, really hard, and the fact is, South Park's animation is incredibly simple. Like, no matter how, like, the most complicated it got, it's still simpler than RWBY. So it's like, it's basically saying we want to do something that's more complicated and more difficult to do and more time-consuming to do, and we want to do it with the same emphasis that South Park does. And ultimately, it comes down to the 4- and 5-minute episodes that don't really accomplish much, that have a whole bunch of animation problems, that have a whole bunch of voice acting problems, all these different problems that could easily be fixed if you had more time to do so. But they don't have more time to do so, and icto facto, we have a terrible series. Terrible. Okay, that's about enough. Okay, well, here's the thing about it. Like, this should have been easily predicted by a lot of people, based on what Monty said at RTX. I think that's what it is. That's where the panel was from. That was just before it released. They posted that panel up and him talking about stuff, and of course I had to watch it because apparently I was uninformed, and I couldn't make an intelligent opinion on a series unless I had seen the panel. Here's the ultimate problem with that. Yeah, he said some very fundamental things in that thing that basically proved he either knew nothing of writing, or he had a very childish understanding of what writing is and what writing could be. And that's I mean, once I watched this, I was like, and that's the point where hopefully I would have said, because you never know with this, but hopefully I would have said something, because some of these points, it like caught me off guard really hard. I was like, wow, that was kind of dumb for him to say. Like, it was almost as if he doesn't know what he's talking about. And when you see the whole series pan out, it is as if the series isn't talking about. Like, I know this is getting off topic a little bit, so I'm sorry about that, but I'm almost assured that all of the good moments in the series that are not, like, they shouldn't be in that series are written by other people other than Monty. Everything else is just, like, there's so much stupid in the series that, like, the few moments, like when Ruby and John are talking in the hallway, Ruby says some absolutely brilliant things, and it's beautiful. That should not have been in that series, because there's no way Monty would have thought of that. And if he did, well, he sure does like to make a dumb series. Oh, man. Alright, but first thing he was talking about, when he was talking about this, just three major things. He's talking about characteristics. He's talking about why do the faces look that way. And this is more of a petty point, but it's just, I kind of hate the fact that he kind of ignored this point completely. But he was talking about, like, this one person asked about why do the faces look the way they do. And he was talking about the characteristics. Basically, he's saying, why does Ruby have big eyes and all this stuff like that? And really what the guy was asking about was, why were the characters animated, and why were the characters modeled the way they were modeled? Why didn't they have a certain look to it? And it's the fact that he just wanted that artistic style. That's what he wanted. It's his series, that's what he wanted. And the fact that he blatantly ignored that guy's question and started going into more depth almost seemed like he was too eager to talk about character development, and this hardcore leads into other things. Like the biggest issue that I'm going to talk about in just a little bit, he basically, like, full on, like, leads into this idea about how character development should be and how character development ought to be, and it's literally the wrong thing to do. It is one of those things where it's like, there's a lot of people talk to me and they kind of argue with me about saying it's my opinion and stuff. And in the video that you did or did not watch, there are definitely some opinion points in it, like the fact that I didn't like Nora in episode 8. Like, yeah, I went from liking Nora to not liking Nora, and then now I like Nora again, and I'll talk about that in the second review. But that's opinion. That's most certainly opinion, even though she was, like, even though I think there is a good argument to have about whether that is opinion or not. I'm willing to give you that is opinion. There are other things that are opinion in that thing. But there are certain writing things that are beyond, they are, whether that makes any kind of sense within the realm that they have developed. Like, of course, people argue, like, it's a cartoon, they can do whatever they want. No. Cartoons have established rules. If this was Adventure Time, you can't argue anything. Adventure Time literally has no rules to break. That's the point. Adventure Time goes to those extremes, while this series definitely has rules. It has rules of every single idea you can possibly have. It has very strict confines. And, oh crap, I don't know even where I'm going. But basically with these rules, like you have to establish these things. And once you break those confines that you have established in your series, no matter what kind of cartoon it is, I mean, that's where everything goes wrong. Like, that's the thing is, when someone gets hit on the head with, like, a giant, like, iron anvil, that's what it is, anvil, and in one of the Chuck Jones cartoons, you don't question that. You don't go, whoa, that's unrealistic, because that happens all the time. That's the point. In RWBY, these guys, they have their weapons. They use them in they use them in ways that are normal in human society. They have things that work. Physics works in that area in the same way they would in anywhere else. And when you break that stuff, when you do things that are so out of the world, that is a fundamental problem, and then that is breaking the establishment. And that's not opinion. That's you establishing something and then you going against what you established. Yeah, so I got way off there with that. But that's the fact that he doesn't understand the character development, and he doesn't understand that stuff very well. Sorry, I got way off topic. Here, we're going on to the next thing. And this is what he said word for word. The assets that are built, which are about 1,000,000 times better than the trailers. He said this. The problem with that is, better is not the correct word here. In fact, the fact that they could spend more time and more effort, because in some of the... Yeah, okay, I'd give that to the RWBY, because the RWBY was pretty rushed. The RWBY trailer, at least the assets were pretty rushed. But the Yang and the yellow and the white trailer, and even the black trailer had good assets too, had better assets than the show. They had better functionality than the show. They had better interactions through the show. I think, if I remember it correctly, which I probably don't, Yang punches a guy through glass, and that glass shatters, and it's not the best shattered, but it's a cool shatter. It works. I don't have a problem with it. That never happens in the series because they have such a limited time to do this stuff. They can't do anything. The spaceships look fake and awful because of the awful texturing and coloring. Whether they texture or not, whether it could be cel-shaded, who knows? I don't really know, nor do I really care. But the fact is, texturing is impossible to do in this amount of... the fact is, they say that they built this stuff, and yet it looks bad. Like they said, we built these beautiful schools. No, that you didn't. You built subpar schools. You built these vast, bland grounds that has nothing in them. There's very little detail. So it's the fact that he talked about how the trailers were so bad. Well, the trailers were not bad. I know I already discussed this, but the fact that he said this, it makes no sense because, yeah, the assets... Well, no, because see, the fact is, with the show, the assets are more varied. Really, that's ultimately the point. They all have about the same level of quality, but they're just more stuff there than in the trailers. And I mean, and that's understandable. They had 9 months to work on this series beforehand. They're going to have some stuff built beforehand. But the fact is, the quality is not better. There is nothing about the show that is any better than the trailers. Because for every bit that is good, for every joke that is really funny, for every line of dialogue that is really memorable and really well, hard-hitting and intelligent, there are a large number of horrible jokes, and there are a large number of horribly written and horribly spoken lines of dialogue. And that's the whole point of that. The fact is, it's just everything about the trailers were the trailers were legitimately great, and by saying that the show is better is very, very sad. I'd actually say, because it's almost like he deluded himself into thinking that. I know people said, "Oh, that's just an opinion." Like I said, I argued with the opinion thing. I was like, "No, it's not opinion. It is objectively bad." And I'm pretty good. That video that you did or did not watch has a really, really good logical argument to how and why it is in fact objectively bad. And like I said, if it was just the art problem, if it was just the problems in the art, I didn't even mention the problems in the art in the video for the most part. I really didn't. If that was all of the problem, if that was only the problem, then that would make sense. I mean, that'd be bad on me, because I'm sitting here talking about how this show is a problem. And the fact is, yes, this could have been easily controlled. Yes, this could have been easily fixed by having a longer time frame. Even if it was just 2 weeks between just a week between each release, giving 2 weeks for each show to be made, it would be... the quality would be infinitely better. It'd be so much better because you wouldn't have to rush everything. But the fact that there are so many points to why it is objectively bad, and why his statement here is absolutely stupid. The fact that there are so many lines of dialogue that are just so misread, that is so bad. And see, the opinion would be how bad these lines are written, not whether the fact that they're bad. So, there you go with that one. The writing is just awful, and I point out... I didn't even go into all the details, and I'll kind of hit one of the main points later on after this video, after I'm done talking about this Monty point. But like, the writing is just, I didn't even go into all of it, and it's just fundamentally bad on, like, almost every level on character development and character, all this, blah, 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 blah. And it's just, the sound effects are bad, the animation is bad, which is, like, the one thing you would expect. Like, you would expect out of this entire series that, even with the art being terrible, even with the voice acting being terrible, all of these things, you would expect the one thing to be great would be the animation, but the problem is, the show itself does not give Monty, Rooster Teeth does not give Monty the time to animate well. So, there are a lot of rushed animations, there are a lot of incorrect animations, there are a lot of animation errors that are pretty funny, and continuity errors because of that. Because animating, just the fact that keeping something continuity while animating is much harder to do rather than just a TV show, because at least when you reset and you reshoot a scene, you can actually have that person put something back in their hand or blah blah blah. While in animation, you have to animate all that stuff happening. And yeah, keeping the continuity would be a little easier, but the fact is you have to animate that continuity properly, and that's where the difficulty comes in. Alright, moving on from that to the next point, he says, and this is the one point that basically said that would have been the point that would have said, okay, this series will be bad. And it's here. A lot of the motivation for Ruby herself honestly comes from the innocence. That is literally that's word for word what Monty said during that panel. If you do not know why that is an incorrect statement, you are misinformed and you do not have a grasp on the writing quality today of certain aspects. Basically, children written today are not written today. And by that I mean like they're just like, it's not that the fact that they're written from like a past perspective or something like that. No, children are just not written today. They do not have any characteristics. They do not have any kind of. It's just a gigantic nothing. And it comes from that one word, innocence. That's literally. It's such a problematic thing. Like almost, you can have innocent characters. Because there are, that is an aspect that you can have. That's reasonable. But the fact is, almost everything, every single aspect, almost every movie, almost every TV show, almost every animated show, movies, like all these different things, video games, almost all of the time, the base idea for a child, and the only child development for a child would be innocence. That's the basic characteristic that almost all children have in all medium, because all children are not written well. They never are, and they probably won't ever be again. At least not in a grand scale, not in a universal scale. Maybe because people argued, and I definitely agree with that the writing of a child was done well in The Walking Dead. My bad. I forgot that. But they said that I can't remember her name. Man, that's sad. But they said she was written incredibly well, and that's very true. And she doesn't have that base innocence. Like that's not her core characteristic. She does have that. She does have the innocence of that, but that's not her basic characteristic. That's just a sub part of her. That's a very small part of her character establishment, character development. And this is the fundamental reason what the problem is. The fact that he said that most of her motivation comes from her innocence is basically establishing the fact that he doesn't know several aspects of writing. He thinks that innocence is a good character trait to have. It is not a good character trait to have and establish, because that is not a character trait. It is literally nothing. That's basically the best way I can say it. Like, you could do. If you did nothing with the character, if she stood blank-faced and just never said anything, just stood around and did nothing, that is at least more interesting than innocence. Because innocence is the most bland and basic character trait you can give to a child, or to anyone for that matter. And the fact that he says that almost all of his motivation comes from this innocence is profoundly dumb, I guess I'd say, in the most respectful way I could possibly say that. It is in a more disrespectful way to say that, it's pretty inept of him. It is pretty Yeah, I'd say inept is probably the proper word for that, and that's pretty mean. But it's true. That's the sad thing. He also goes and discuss. I think it was either just a little before that line or a little after that line. He also goes and discuss that how people want character development. Like, he's talking about character development, about how this idea of how we should develop stuff and how characters should be portrayed in series and how you should learn about those characters over time. But the fundamental problem with that is he doesn't understand character establishment as to oppose character development. You need to establish your characters immediately because it's called character establishment. If we don't know who these characters are, we're not going to root for them. That is a very, very true fact. That is literally writing 101. Character establishment versus character development. And he seems to mix these two up a bit. He does establish, but the fact is you need to establish a lot of a character, really. Not so much that it bogs the guy down, but the fact is they just basically establish some aspects of these characters, like just some part of it. Really. Just some minor aspect of character development they establish. And that's not good enough. Like, with Blake, it's kind of good enough because that's like her whole point is the fact that she's this mysterious girl that you don't know really anything about her and she's kind of quiet. That's perfectly good. That's understandable. But Yang, we don't understand why she gets all angry all the time. Ruby, we do not understand why she's retarded, why she's an idiot, and why she is so motivated to do good other than the fact that her family told her to do good, you know? Yeah, there you go. Always do good. Always fight for those, always fight for those. But that's so generic and plain. You need to do better than that. You got to give us some kind of motivation. You got to give us some kind of reasoning. I mean, it's okay that she wants to help all these people, but we got to know why. But at least they do establish that. But the fact is, they don't show how they're good with these weapons. They don't show how or why they interact with each other the way they do. It's just so much of the show is like basically and how he describes it in the panel is the fact that we are going to tell in detail along the way. And I'm not even getting into the whole it's a visual medium, so show not tell, because I'm not going to get into that. I wasn't expecting professional quality out of these guys anyways. I wasn't expecting professional cinematography out of these guys. But at the very least they do establish some things, but it's almost as if he doesn't understand the difference between establishing something and character development, because character establishment and character development are two very fundamental things, fundamentally different things, and if they're not handled properly, it absolutely just throws the entire series underneath the bus. And essentially that's what happened with RWBY, RWBY, because I don't want to call it RWBY because it's confusing. RWBY was thrown under a bus pretty hard, basically off of the writing, because I can forgive animation errors, I can forgive animation problems, I can forgive even art styles looking sloppy and unrefined. I cannot forgive something that should have been written years ago. I cannot forgive something that should have been done a long time ago, and I can't forgive something that is too bland and basic and no effort put into it. And I hate to say, and I know some like they put effort into it. Not in the writing, because if anyone would put any effort into it, they would have came to the exact same conclusions that I did, or at least they would have come into some similar conclusions of what I did. Or the even sadder idea is that they did come to some of the conclusions that I did, and this was the improvement upon the old series, and that is a very sad idea. The fact that they might have edited it to make it better, and it's still as bad as it is, that's kind of depressing. But what are you going to do? Yeah, Innocence is too bland, and Innocence is not a good thing for a character development to be based around. That is pretty dumb. Also, and I almost completely forgot about this, also, she is not innocent, at least not in the traditional definition of the word innocence. She goes around and cuts off monsters' heads. She goes around murdering monsters. Now, you can argue we're not going to argue that this is an evil thing. We're not going to argue that. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, she's not even a good person. No, the fact is, innocence and its base definition implies quite a lot about a character. About a character not willing to do harm to other people, not willing to do harm. But the fact is, yes, she is still a nice and good person, and that's the correct thing to go. I mean, she's more naive. That would have been a way better word, because naive, one, you can build off that, as in, she gets taken advantage of in these situations, or she doesn't understand certain things culturally or whatever, or that's a problem. You can actually use that as a plot device, or I guess that's bad too. But you can just use that as a means, as a narrative means of either her growing out of that or her getting, like, I guess, into problems or getting used because of that. That's a reasonable thing. But innocence is not the correct word, because she is not innocent. Truthfully, she's a good, nice person, and she's naive, but she's most certainly not innocent. And the fact that she's a brutal killer, whether she's attacking humans or not, is pretty irrelevant. She does dramatic murdering of monsters, and yeah, of course that's not bad, but that pretty much completely eludes away from the whole idea of an innocent person, or most importantly, the innocent child. She has grown up in growing up in these kind of worlds kind of takes your innocence away. That's why they said, that's why in like Zombieland they have like they said, everyone grows up in Zombieland. Like, there are no children in Zombieland. You know, that kind of idea is the fact that even her being a young girl, she has seen all of these things, that she is no longer innocent based on that fact that she lives in this violent society where she actually have to kill things to stay alive. And of course, they don't have to kill things to stay alive, but her job is to initially kill things to help other people stay alive, as, some kind of police force. She's not innocent, and that's ultimately the problem with what I'm saying. Because once he said innocence, that's like there are so many problems with that word being used in any kind of intelligent fashion in media today. It's not a good word to use, because it almost immediately sparks off like, well, there's something wrong with this, because innocence is a horribly lazy written character trait. It can be written properly, and it probably has been written properly even in recent years, but 90% of the media, 99% of the media that covers or deals with innocence is either one of two things: either the poorly written crap, or it's the basically the joke of the XBL Live arcade games, where a child loses their innocence, and that's the whole point of the game. It's still good, I like them, but like, it's just the fact that the innocence is not their basic characteristic. So yeah. Another general complaints. I have general complaints. I'm just gonna ramble for hopefully a little bit, even though this has already been 40 minutes. Yeah, there was a lot. People kept yelling, like, people kept complaining about like certain stuff, and yeah, like here's the one big thing that everyone, like this one guy kept arguing with me about and would not even hear me out. So I'm assuming that I wasn't in detailed enough for some of the less intelligent people who watch my video. I'm gonna definitely do a way more detailed and way like seriously smash you over the head with a hammer with this, because it has to, because it's probably the moment that I went from hating this video. Like, the series was okay with episode 7, and I hated the series at episode 8, and then now I loathe the series after episode 10, because it basically said I'm an idiot for thinking up of all these things, and I'm retarded for not having considered the fact that maybe this show was just meant for either dumb people or some other thing like that. I mean, it was seriously like episode 10 basically slapped me in the face, saying all of those things that you said that are absolutely 100 correct are not 100 correct, you dummy. How dare you think of something like that? And so it's like, oh great, now apparently this series has something out for me, and I got to be out for it. But like one of the main points of the fact that I basically discussed, and I didn't put a whole lot of effort into it, which is probably my bad, but I think people should have been able to see it anyways, was the fact that Ruby should not have been the leader of Team RWBY. Like, there are unfounded amounts of evidence that would point otherwise. Like, I wouldn't care, even if they had to put someone else completely out of that team in the leader position of Team RWBY, that would be better. Yeah, I've talked about some of the points, and I'm definitely going to hit this point harder in the second review, but like the thing I left out of the review completely was how stupid the plan to kill the massive bird was. Because the whole point I was talking about it was the fact that, and here's the part that was kind of like with Monty was talking about the innocence, the fact that RWBY said we don't have to kill these monsters. And I was trying to be kind of I guess snobbish about it, because like she says we don't have to kill these monsters, and then like 2 minutes later she literally drags the monster by the neck up a gigantic mountain, this giant bird, up a gigantic mountain to decapitate it. And then I had to go, yeah, we totally didn't, and then I said, yeah, we totally didn't have to kill that monster. Yeah, I know, that's what I'm trying to establish. The fact, then that's what I was talking about in that part. Because I was talking about, how stupid some of the weapons are, because, like, some of the weapons are smart, some of the weapons are really dumb. That's the thing that bothered me, it bothered me at the moment, it's like, you can't say we don't have to kill these monsters, and then do it in a way that is just so over the top that it's crude at that point. Like, it wouldn't have been bad at all if RWBY had just said, if RWBY hadn't said, we don't have to kill them. But no, you apparently have to kill them in a way that's pretty dramatic, or else no. I mean, it's there just to look cool. That's really the whole point of that thing. So I'm not stupid enough to go, oh, they were trying. No, I know why they did it. It's like, you can't have them say that and then have them kill the bird in that way. But just to be kind of frank, if you haven't thought about this, if you're remotely intelligent, you're definitely going to pick up on this. And if not, I am really sorry about that, and I will try. You'll have to watch the second part of the review in order to get a better understanding of that, and I'll definitely put a video up of that. The second part of the review, the bird is the plan to kill the bird, which I'm assuming is the biggest reason why RWBY became the leader. Is so profoundly stupid on every single level. Like, no human on the face of the earth would have come up with this problem had they been leader material. Even if they hadn't been leader material, like most average intelligence people should have not have thought of that as a review. Like, it takes someone incredibly stupid to come up with this idea, because the fact is, one, the bird I'll go into more detail on the other thing, but I'll hit some of the bigger points here. Well, the bird itself has fired feathers at you out of its wings, so the bird fired the feathers at RWBY. This was pretty specific. This was pretty, it was it was massively there. Like, it got to the point where her cape got caught and she almost got killed by the scorpion. So you'd think you'd have something in your mind. Okay, this bird can throw its feathers at me, which means if it's throwing its feathers at me from its wings that it's flying on right now, it must be able to regenerate those feathers pretty quickly. As it does, because it can throw the feathers and fly and blah, blah, blah. So, but the very first part of the plan, the most important part of the plan, is for one, the bird to land, which I don't know how you plan for that. That's kind of weird. You have to plan on where it's going to land, and they must have planned that too. But also the fact that you're going to freeze its tail in place so it's stuck, and that the bird will, one, not rip out it. Even if you would think that the bird's tail feathers for some reason wouldn't dislodge, that it would still, if the tails wouldn't dislodge and regrow back real quick like it does everywhere else, the fact that it wouldn't, even if it wouldn't regrow back quickly or even regrow back at all, it still wouldn't be able to break its feathers off in order to escape that thing, because animals do that. But it relies on the fact that the bird will, one, land, two, its feathers will not be able to pop out and regrow back, and then three, when she hits the bird in the neck for the first time with her scythe, that would have cut the bird's head off immediately. So, but they had planned it taking to kill the bird, running up a mountain to decapitate it. So if it would not have slit its head right off when it first hit the bird, it most certainly would not have done any more damage, or at least the bird's head would have fell off halfway up the mountain. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. It's the fact that it's that, right? That once you think about it in a logical sense, in a sense that unless you're going to just swim away, oh, it's a cartoon, they can do whatever they want, even though they established this stuff. As long as if you're thinking like that, the show is awesome. There's nothing wrong with the show, because stupid stuff happens all the time. There is literally nothing wrong with the show at that point. If that's how you're going to think. It's it's a cartoon, they can do whatever they want. If you're an intelligent human being who likes cartoons, and you like good stories and stuff like that, yeah, it's bad, it's dumb. You can't establish the fact that the bird throws feathers at you, and then, anyone who was going to create that plan would not have thought of, okay, we have to do something in order to make sure that feathers are stuck on the bird. Because no, you threw the feathers at me. Blah blah blah. Okay, well, that's dumb and and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of the stuff I'm talking about. Like it's just like people and that like literally this plan that kills this bird that should not have happened at any level of the plan. And I've got a lot more to talk about that plan too. Makes her the leader. And someone keeps telling me, it's like, well, she, like, and this one guy who was arguing with it, who had to be the dumbest person I've ever argued with in my entire life, he even said, well, yeah, she hasn't shown any reason for being a leader yet. I'm like, the whole point of that exercise was to find out who had leadership abilities and who did not. So the fact that she actively, even if she didn't act stupid, even if she did not have any kind of stupidity reasoning, stupidity actions, incredibly dumb and inept things that she would have done that would have made me say that she was not a leader, because that's what happens. I say that she actively shouldn't be the leader, while John didn't show anything of being the leader. But the fact is, even if she did nothing, none of those things, and she just showed signs that, like, she was just neutral about the whole object, and she showed no signs. She showed no signs of being a bad leader. That still should not have given her the leadership position. It should have been other things, and that's fundamentally, that's what I'm talking about. It's like the fact that this guy kept arguing with me. He said it was like, well, they won't shine leaders. Yeah, and it's like the whole point of the stupid test was to find out if you're a leader or not. And it's like, oh, and find out where you need to be in your teams, and finding out the teams, and it's just and it's that kind of thing. And it's just, oh man, that's the thing, is it almost every aspect of the show is basically that. It's just inept things that have not been thought through throughout this entire series, and that's ultimately the problem. Because if the writing wasn't so like, even if it was bad, but it had like its continuity correct, if it wasn't like so like not, it wouldn't be plot holy, but it's just things happen that shouldn't happen in any kind of reasonable state. Like you can have weird things happen in a series and it still works, but they have to be few and far between, and they have to be kind of explainable within a realm of rationality that has been established within the series. That is okay. That's probable, but the fact is, almost every episode has at least something in it that just should not happen. It is something that something that is so profoundly wrong and incorrect that just doesn't make any sense. And it's just like people say things that don't work, and things happen, and people do things, and people yell at each other for no reason, and you have these scenes that come out of nowhere, and it's just it's a whole bunch of mess. And yeah, I think I'm done because I'm rambling. Yeah, we'll end it there. And they're saying that these are just some of the things that I either can't say or can't say well enough, like especially with the viewership and stuff like that. Like next, I'm gonna, as soon as the 16th episode is done, which I think is today, I'm gonna start working on the second half of the review, and the end half of the second half of the season review, and I'm gonna talk about and discuss why that was pretty bad, because it's worse than the first half. You know how things normally turn out, but we're done. Those are just some of the problems I came up with. Sorry if you heard me rambling. Sorry about all this. I know it's going to be like an hour-long video, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And for those of you who's still here, and you're even remotely wondering about my output schedule, I said I was going to do the Naruto volume, like the Naruto, the second review of Naruto next. That is not true. I'm not going to do that. I've got a really short review to do of A Bride's Story, I think it is. Yeah, A Bride's Story. I've got a really short review because I have basically one bone to pick with it, and everything else is pretty good about it. So I've got a quick thing to say about that. I'll do that. Then I'll do a video about, and then I'll do the Naruto video, and then even after that, I'm gonna do the Bakuman video, which I know chronologically. Oh, numerically, that'd be the problem, because numerically, the Bakuman reviews are really close together, but chronologically, they're far enough apart that I don't really care anymore. So I want to read it, because I literally have not read the last 3 volumes of that, because I don't want to. So I'm gonna do Bride's Story, Naruto Part 2, and then Bakuman Part 3, and then I think I'm gonna do something where I actually put it up where I'm gonna let you guys pick what like I'll give you a list of a bunch of stuff that I have to review, both book like a good and bad list that you can pick from, and then just kind of let you guys pick. Because like my ideas of a schedule is kind of weird, and like it goes all over the place and it changes dramatically. So yeah, I think I'm gonna let you guys pick, and that'd be a little fun. Yay! Oh yeah. Well, with that said, thank you for listening in. Can't watch because there's nothing to watch. Thank you for listening in on this horrifyingly long and pointless video. I don't know. Hopefully you weren't too offended by the video at the first part, because I literally call you dumb. I call all the fans of the series dumb. Oh man. And I'm hoping that this will cause more of an intellectual discourse rather than just people yelling at each other, like yelling at me and calling me dumb and that my opinion's stupid and I should go die. And then even the dumbest thing that you could possibly say after that is, I want to see you do better. The production value on my video is absolutely horrible, and it still is better because at least there's a reason for my production being as horrible it is, because I get like 12 views on all my videos. So yeah, there. Yeah. So yeah, I think we're done. Thank you guys for watching, and have a nice day.